Good morning, good morning, good morning. This is Monday, the 18th of May, and today we're going to be talking about why lived experience does not equal expertise when it comes to burnout. I'm a bit discombobulated this morning. I always said these lives would be me kind of straight after yoga. I have managed to get showered. You'll be pleased to know what I said, Clay, but I'm not fully ready. My phone has been going non-stop all morning. Um, I put a LinkedIn post out last week um, about like the middling, right? Are any of you in this kind of middling at the moment, whereby you have got maybe kind of aging parents and then kind of aging kids, and the kids are kind of at a point and the parents are at a point, and you just find yourself middling in the middle, trying to juggle kind of both ends of that scale. I think lots of us are in that boat at the moment, aren't we? So my phone has been going with a lot of that this morning. Plus, some clients have needed or have been asking for some kind of help and support this morning. But here we are. Lived experience does not equal expertise. This is what I want to just talk to you about today. As always, if you've got questions, if you've got comments, if you've got feedback, I want to be able to hear it all. Many of you have been joining me for replays, not necessarily live. I'm still debating. Let me know if you also want this on LinkedIn. So I've stuck to YouTube at the moment. I did change the time for you all. So we started these at 7:30, didn't we? And then you were or 7. Was I doing it at 7? 7:30. And then I was asked if I could push it back to 8, which I've done. But I am also being asked if I can stream this across LinkedIn as well. So let me know in the comments. Do you want it across both? Do some of you have a kind of preference in terms of platform that you would like me to focus on for you? Does that make it easier for you? I suppose is the question. Does that make it easier for you? Or you can just continue to subscribe to me on here. LinkedIn is still doing this thing at the minute, isn't it? Where it's trying to keep all of us hidden. Right? We follow people for a reason. We want to see their content. We want to engage. We want to support. We want to continue to like. We follow people because we're interested. And then we never get to see them again, do we? We never, ever get to see them again. LinkedIn just kind of keeps filling our feed then with more random strangers and more random content. You think, what's going on here? If anybody has a fix for that, please let me know. That would be great to hear. Okay, let's get in it. Let's get into today then, shall we? So, lived experience does not equal expertise. I have talked about this a lot over years, and I do think it's really important. Now, what I want to start by saying is that your lived experience, if you have experienced burnout, this is not to say that your lived experience does not matter, because it does. And I think for many of us that have the lived experience, right, that have experienced burnout, we know what it feels like. We know how isolating it can be, how lonely it can be. We know how hard it can be. We know what it is like to try and navigate this on our own. Maybe you yourself had some support. I didn't. I couldn't find really the stuff that I was reading. So the stuff that I was kind of looking at, the stuff that I was reading, none of it explained my own lived experience of burnout. None of it captured what I had been going through. None of it captured what I had been feeling. None of it captured the physical sensations, any of that kind of stuff. And even when I started to reach out to more coaches and the therapists that I was working with, nobody understood it. And that can feel really lonely, and that can feel really isolating. And if you have had a similar experience to that, knowing what that feels like, knowing how hard it can be, knowing how isolating it can be, knowing how lonely it can be, knowing how challenging it can be, knowing how It impacts you emotionally and physically and mentally, how it impacts your work, your life, your relationships, all of that stuff. Knowing that just what it feels like is valid. So when I say lived experience doesn't equal expertise, I'm not taking any of that away. And I do think that your lived experience adds to the understanding that you can give to your clients. I think it adds to the empathy. I think it adds to the experience, right? Being able to relate to clients. Now, there are lots of people I know that are out there coaching execs and coaching leaders and coaching boards, right? I've coached a number of chief execs. I've coached, seen chairs of the board and all sorts of stuff over the years. And I know there is this thing like we don't have to have been a CEO to be able to coach CEOs. We don't have to have been chair of the board in order to coach chair of the board. And we don't have to have been at burnout in order to be coaching burnout. And without really understanding burnout and the impact that it has on the brain and the body and the nervous system and the emotions and the relationship and the career and how it impacts your decision making, how it impacts all of your thoughts, how it impacts your ability to be able to move forward and make decisions and gain momentum and set goals and achieve goals and all of that stuff. Without being able to understand all of that, actually, in some ways, coaching burnout can be that little bit harder. And that's where we need the expertise. We need the expertise because we need to understand what is going on in the brain. We need the expertise to understand what is going on in the body, right? We need the expertise to be able to explain and understand why goal setting isn't just goal setting, why it's like doubly, triply, quadruply hard for people that have experienced burnout. Why you can, agree to something in a coaching session and say, yes, like I'm absolutely going to take that step. I'm going to take that action. And then go into freeze mode as soon as you leave the coaching, because taking the action feels really scary. Taking the action feels impossible. Taking the action, yeah, it feels impossible, right? It's like, I want to be able to do this, but there's so much fear that's coming up. Not knowing the neuroscience behind that, not understanding what's going on within the nervous system, within the body, not understanding that kind of fight, flight, freeze, and fawn mode, not understanding all of that as a coach can have a big impact on your coaching clients. And what I see a lot of are individuals, particularly all over LinkedIn. And I saw one actually just this morning. I was just kind of scrolling on LinkedIn this morning before I got on my yoga mat. Not usually what I do. But I was scrolling this morning and somebody has put this post on there to say that they experienced burnout last year. Their headline reads like, they're already trained, they're already qualified, they know what they're doing. But their story, their post was, I experienced burnout last year. Now I am training as a life coach and I want to be able to help all of my clients. But if you look at their headline, it says they're already coaching clients, right? It reads as though they're a kind of expert burnout coach that knows everything there is to know about burnout. And where the kind of, because I do then go into a little bit of kind of investigative mode, but actually where they're training, the life coaching qualification that they are doing includes nothing about the nervous system, includes nothing about neuroscience, includes nothing about burnout. It's all very kind of mindset, positive psychology, positive thinking, and that's great. If we are dealing with clients that have kind of full capacity, full agency, clients that are able to, that have full capacity, that are able to move forward, that are able to set goals, that are able to think positively and all of that stuff. We cannot think our way out of burnout. We cannot positively mindset our way out of burnout. If we could do that, all of the rising numbers of burnout would be decreasing. If it were that simple, we wouldn't be seeing people reach burnout in the first place, and we wouldn't then be seeing people struggling to come out of it the other side. We really need a, a balance of everything. And just like I've experienced burnout and now I want to help people through it, isn't enough. It's just not enough to coach burnout safely, morally, and ethically. I get there is the want to do it, right? There is this, there's this drive, there is this knowing that you don't want anybody to experience what you went through. And I've said many times before, I don't think we choose this work. I think this work chooses us. I never, ever imagined that I would be working with burnout. I never imagined I would be talking about it, coaching it, training in it, researching it, studying it. Never imagined any of that stuff. You know, I had my first period of burnout. I refused to admit that that was burnout. I had my second period of burnout two years later, right? My first burnout made me really seriously ill, really seriously ill. My second one 2 years later nearly killed me. And it was kind of that point, and hearing about the death of the woman that replaced me in my in-house role, that's what kind of instantly was like, I need to be the one to kind of fix this. I've got to be the one to, I've got like, I can't allow anybody else to experience what I went through. And that's what started me on this path. But as I said, I couldn't find a lot of the literature. I couldn't find the information. I couldn't find everything to kind of understand it fully. I couldn't find what I wanted in terms of prevention or recovery. The professionals that I was working with, they could kind of talk about stress, but they didn't understand burnout. And even what they were talking about and saying it was burnout didn't relate to my own lived experience. And that's why I've spent 12 years joining the dots on all of this. But I also know the more that I began to share my story, and I was already coaching at the time. I left my in-house role. I started my own consultancy, and I was doing consultancy and coaching. And the more that I began to share my own story about burnout, what I had been through, how it had impacted me, talking about the death of the woman that had replaced me, and talking about the lack of support for people in my sector that were experiencing the same thing that I was. The more that I started to do that, the more clients were coming to me that, well, you've just described me. You've just described my experience. You've just described exactly what it is that I'm going through. I now want you to be my coach. And I was a great coach, right? I'd done the training, I'd done the qualifications, I ticked the boxes. All of my clients were making incredible progress. And yet I realized, with the clients that were saying, like, you're talking about my lived experience, those clients were not moving forward in the same way as the clients that I was coaching that, let's say, kind of had full capacity, right? That weren't on the brink of burnout or experiencing burnout or coming through the other side of burnout. There was a fundamental change and a fundamental shift. But I also knew, because I'd been there myself, that certain types of therapy also weren't enough to kind of help these people because it hadn't helped me. And so certain types of coaching weren't enough because it hadn't helped me. And that's where I began to study and join the dots and understand it. What else did these clients that had the same experience of me, what else did they need? What else needed to be included in the coaching to allow these people to come through it more effectively, to come through it more safely, to come through it with the right level of support? to come through it and not be living in fear of ending up in burnout again, to come through it and be able to make progress, to be able to put one foot in front of the other, to be able to move forward in the right way. How could my clients that were experiencing burnout and or on the brink of burnout, what did they need to allow them to have the same momentum as the clients that were not at burnout? And or how did coaching need to change for everybody in order to prevent burnout in the first place? That's where I kind of started to join the dots. That's where, kind of 12 years of this work has taken me. And I don't think enough coaches are identifying that gap. They're just looking at, I've done this training, and therefore this training must be enough because I want to stop people experiencing what I did. I think I know what burnout is. And therefore, if I can tick the box and say that I've done this training, then I am qualified enough in order to be able to do this training and make the difference. And I saw the difference. I was already coaching people at full capacity. The clients that were at burnout or on the brink of burnout or just coming through the other side of burnout were experiencing something different. So, as I said, our lived experience matters. I don't want to invalidate that at all. It absolutely matters. It gives you a lived experience that other coaches will not have. It gives you the inside knowledge to know how shit and how hard and how lonely and how difficult burnout can be. And at the same time, if you do not have the expertise, the knowledge and the understanding to know how coaching needs to change, how coaching needs to be different when you are coaching people that are on the brink of burnout or coming through the other side of it, that's where it can start to be dangerous. That's where it can start to do more harm than good. That's where you can be pushing people further than they have capacity for. But also, if you are just, let's say, like doing standard coaching and your clients stop making progress, they may then start to think that they're the problem. They may start to think that, it's that they just like nothing's going to help them. Nothing's going to help them to move forward. Their inner talk becomes even more. And that inner talk is already happening with burnout in the first place. Because again, burnout can fundamentally change our brain, our body, our nervous system. Burnout can impact our brain and our body in the same way as trauma. So we already think for a period of time, again, until we start to come through an element of recovery, we already think that we're the problem. We already think that we failed. We already think that we weren't good enough. And if coaching is then kind of like exacerbating that, right? If coaching is heightening those feelings because what you've been taught in your coach training doesn't account for the fact that burnout fundamentally changes the brain, the body, and the nervous system of your clients, right? Most coach training assumes that clients have full capacity, that clients can move forward, that if you just change the mindset, that if you just reframe some of this stuff, then it's going to make the difference, right? Just think more positively. Just reframe your thinking, just reframe your mindset. Like get out of your own way fundamentally, right? And I know I'm being quite, I suppose quite kind of quite crude in the thinking here in terms of like simplifying everything, but fundamentally that's what we get trained as trained in as coaches. I've done a number of different coaching qualifications, and that training matters. Again, we know coaching is completely unregulated. Anybody could wake up this morning and just say, I'm a coach. And anybody can wake up this morning and just say, oh, I'm a burnout coach. That's where I want to be. I'm also seeing lots of people just sticking burnout in the LinkedIn headline. And actually what they're doing is nothing to do with burnout whatsoever. But it's like, well, it's the latest buzzword. I'll put that in there. I might get myself some additional clients. Because of the fact that coaching is already unregulated, You don't need to be trained, you don't need to be qualified, you don't need to have certificates, you don't need to have supervision, you don't need anything, right? Literally anybody can wake up tomorrow. It's even more important that those of us that are coaching in the burnout space do so with morals and ethics so that our clients are safe. So that we're not doing inadvertently, we're not pushing our clients further and further into burnout. We're not doing more long-term harm because of burnout. Right? We just got to raise the standard. We have to raise the standard. I could keep ranting on about this forever. I'm not going to. I'm going to say thanks for watching. Thanks for joining. Again, if you've got questions or whatever, come to mind. So I suppose just, as a quick summary, before I start repeating myself and going off on a total rant today, your lived experience matters. I don't want to take any of that away from you. Our lived experience matters. Your lived experience matters. If you have experienced burnout, if you've been through burnout, if you've come the other side of burnout, maybe you've narrowly avoided it, maybe you are in a habitual burnout cycle, but if you have lived on the edge of or you've lived with burnout, as I said, you know the impact, you know how it feels, you know what it looks like, you know how hard and challenging and lonely and all of the crap that comes with it. Right? I'm not taking away from any of that. But it doesn't make you an expert burnout coach. It doesn't give you the expertise, right? I have lived with adenomyosis. I've lived with endometriosis. I had my total hysterectomy last October, right? Having a total hysterectomy does not make me an expert in hysterectomies. Living with adenomyosis does not make me an expert in adenomyosis. I live with bipolar. Living with bipolar doesn't make me an expert in bipolar. I know my bipolar. I know what my hysterectomy was like. I know what my adenomyosis was like. But it doesn't mean that I am an expert in any of those things. It just means that I know what I need. I know what I went through. But if I were all of a sudden to start, talking like I was an expert in hysterectomies, talking like I was an expert in adenomyosis, talking like I'm an expert in bipolar, I could be doing more harm than good. That's how I want us to think about burnout. Your experience matters, and it was your experience. It doesn't mean that you are expert in my burnout, or your next door neighbour's burnout, or your colleague's burnout, or your best friend's burnout. It doesn't make you an expert in any of those things. And if we just continue to, do what I did, or do this thing, or do this, do that, you could be doing inadvertently more harm than good. And as I said, I don't want to take away from your expertise, from your experience, rather. I don't want to take away from your experience. I do want you to be really, really mindful that if you are coaching burnout, you need burnout coaching or some burnout coaching expertise in order for you to coach burnout safely. That's where I'm going to leave it with you today. Again, thanks for joining. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you want this on LinkedIn also. Maybe we could start to do that from next week. Although I was going to say next week, won't be next week. I'm not going to be with you next week because Monday is bank holiday here in the UK, and I am going to take my Monday off. I think all I'm going to do next Monday is some yoga and then spend some time with my partner. I was just about to go into what I'm going to talk to you about next week. I'm not going to. Let me know if you want it on LinkedIn 2 weeks from now. If you've got questions, ask the questions. If you want to get involved in the chat, get involved in the chat. If you want to find out more about what I'm doing, head to kellyswinkler.com. And if you want to find out what kind of burnout coach you are, I will link below the link to the quiz. Are you ready to coach burnout? You'll find out what type of burnout coach you are. And if you want to know also kind of what kind of training, what kind of depth you need in terms of training in order to take this work even further. That's been me for today. lived experience does not equal expertise. I'm going to say thank you very much for joining me. It has been a pleasure to come live with you again today. I'm now going to go and sort my hair out and then get on with the rest of my day. Thank you very much. I will see you all again soon. Take care for now, everybody. Have an amazing day, amazing week, amazing 2 weeks. I will be back with you 2 weeks' time on Monday. Take care. Bye-bye.